Today, I'm going to be talking about the COVID situation for some of our MetroActive members, our business members, and how originally they were in shock, didn't know how to react, and now there seems to be an opportunity for them to be able to come up with a strategy and make some smart decisions and taking advantage of the opportunities that are arising from these interesting times. So I've asked one of our long-term members, Warren Coughlin, who has a brilliant mind when it comes to helping companies form their strategy, to have a chat with me this morning. Warren, can you please give me your perspective on what you've seen happening, some of the opportunities, some of the tools and programs that are available, perhaps?
Sure, and thanks for having me, Baldo. It's great to see you as always. I think your intro was sort of spot on. I think at the beginning of 2020, people came into it with all kinds of plans. You know, it was going to be the year of change, the start of a new decade, and all that kind of stuff. And COVID came in and just basically laid all that to waste. And what I've been seeing is right away, like in March, April, people went into this intense reactive mode because it was this brand new world. Nobody had been through this before. I'd helped a number of people kind of do some of the transitions because I've been through SARS. I've been through 3 or 4 downturns in my own businesses in the past, and there are some skills you can bring to bear. But what I saw was everybody was in this reactive mode. Some pivoted extremely well and took advantage of things, and really, I've had clients who have had their best year this year, and then others really struggled. But we're now at this point after we've come through that initial shock of it all, where people need to start taking a bit of a longer term perspective. Whether you've done it well, whether you're like having a great year, or whether you're still struggling, now's the time to kind of take a breath and say, okay, I'm still in reactive mode. What am I going to do as 2021 is coming up? How do I deploy my scarce resources of time, team, and money to achieve the objectives I want in an uncertain environment, right? Because even though we've come through the initial shock, there's are we into a second wave? What was the government response going to be to that? What's the market response to that going to be? And it's time, I think, to sort of sit back, take a breath, and really plan it out so you're not just in reactive mode. And if
it's interesting, Warren, you actually hit it on the head, because what I've seen, and I get exposed to a lot of business professionals because of MetroActive, there's about 14,000 members. What I've noticed among some of our most successful people even, is that some of them actually have been in a dormant mode, like a shock mode, with some emotional processing. But what I've seen them do is almost cocoon into an internal process where they kind of are touching base with where they're at in life. And now, like this month especially, I'm seeing them waking up and making more longer term structural decisions, the strategic decisions you're talking about. Incidentally, in real estate, we've had 2 of the busiest active months in the Toronto market. It's crazy, how much activity is going on in real estate during this pandemic time, where a lot of people are sitting down not knowing what to do, yet there's so many people that are moving, taking advantage of the opportunity. How about we talk about some of those programs and some of the services that you have that people can leverage, and how they can leverage them moving forward?
Sure. Would it be okay? I wouldn't mind just poking at a couple of things first before getting into
absolutely
programs, because I think it's just useful to set a bit of a context.
Okay.
Like for instance, like right now, like I have a bunch of clients in the event space, but across a lot of clients, there's a couple of things that I've seen. There were a couple of clients I had that were in that kind of cocoon mode that you talked about, and they were actually talking about closing their business. And this does move into the program discussion about getting some decent outside perspective, because both those clients that thought of shutting down, I challenged them on it and suggested some kind of innovative marketing campaigns. They both continued in business. One of them they're up 10% over last year, and they had their best September ever, and they were going to shut down.
Wow. It's ironic, Warren. It's ironic you should say that, because when this first started, the first thing I said is we're going to lose half our restaurants. The good news is the restaurants that stay in business will be able to be more profitable, because somebody's going to pick up the extra business when things start to swing around. And that's exactly what's been happening. In fact, some people in the food industry have decided to take some of their menu items and package them for grocery stores, because people are shopping in grocery stores now rather than eating out. And they're also doing delivery programs where you buy into this membership and they deliver your meals throughout the whole month.
Yeah.
So, what you're saying is absolutely true. The one thing, though, that I would contribute is that I do have some clients on the real estate side run venues and event businesses, live event
Yeah.
businesses. The ones that are suffering significantly are the ones that were catering to a certain threshold that when they were shut down, they could no longer hold those events.
Yeah.
Where they had clients that they would have to do, for example, the larger weddings for. So one client in particular, who's a destination wedding planner, was organizing events in different countries where you would fly all the guests there.
Right.
And her business went from doing 50 or more a year of these high budget big events to, I think she said 3 she's done this year. That is being affected by government regulations, and she doesn't know when that's going to basically come back. But the government has
that's
to open up.
That's where there's the thinking of the pivoting. Like I've had a number of clients who face that, their core business, and I want to talk about that pivoting term for a second, but when your core business has shut down, the analysis has to be is what is the core skill sets we have that can be deployed somewhere else. So I've got a couple of clients in that event space and other spaces where their core business was basically shut down. Just a collapse in demand. But they still have, there's 2 things that still exist. One is they have a set of skills that can be deployed. Secondly, a lot of those events or other things that people wanted, the underlying need that those events serve still exists. So if you are holding an event to do employee engagement, well, you still have a need for employee engagement. And point of fact, I would argue your need for employee engagement is actually higher now because of the stresses. So if you have expertise on how to engage employees that happen to be deployed through events, that expertise can be deployed in other contexts to still achieve the business objective of engagement. Right?
You're bang on, Warren. You're absolutely bang on.
Yes, it's just thinking differently. Now, the other part about the word pivot, I'm actually not a big fan of the word. I use it just because it's been injected into the vernacular, but it suggests a complete shift of position.
Yes.
What needs to happen for a lot of businesses actually is a diversification. That a lot of businesses are going to be in hybrids, like restaurants. Even once COVID is over, I think we are always going to have a hybrid model now of delivery, curbside pickup, patio, and in restaurant. And so the model has changed. And so for a lot of businesses, it's about looking at your distribution model and understanding that what is the underlying need that I serve and what are the different ways that I can serve that need. And so it's actually it's not pivoting in the sense of stopping what you were doing. For some people it is, but for others it's more adding to. There's what part of my business, like 70% of businesses are influenced by online interactions. About 35% of decisions are made online. But if 70% of decisions are influenced by online, well, how are you changing your business model to take advantage of that? Right? And so there's a lot of this sort of creative thinking that's going to be there. And I think you and I were talking before we got on the call, like people are using that term new normal. And I actually think that's a terrible thought, new normal, because the word normal means that you're in a state of stability, even in a new one, right? And there isn't. That kind of stability isn't there.
Warren, you're absolutely right. And adding to what you're saying, what really has happened is where a lot of startup companies were looking to launch their new technology and platforms in different countries, which were more likely to adopt the online technology more readily than in Canada. Now what's happening is Canadians have been forced to start doing things by leveraging technology. And I'm not just talking about the online platforms, whether it be Zoom or GoToMeeting or what it may be. I'm also talking about like the payment systems and all the other aspects. The technologies that some Canadians were so hesitant to embrace, now they're forced to. So in a way, what I'm seeing here is a great opportunity that has arisen because now we have opened up our mind and our emotions to trusting and being familiar with technology. That's what I've seen.
I'll give you another one about expanded thinking, getting rid of old thinking. This is a tough one. And a lot of people, I know there will be some people who react negatively to what I'm about to say, but I want you to think about it. It's supply chain management. Historically, the supply chain management in the last 15, 20 years and maybe longer has all been about lowest possible cost, right? Find the supplier with the lowest possible cost. Well, in the face of COVID, what has that led to? People have lost their supplies. Wendy's in the States actually didn't have access to burgers for a while.
Yeah.
And so in this light of this new, so you're moving from, in my world of strategy, there's three big buckets. There's getting people to buy, managing your costs, and managing risk. And so that supply chain philosophy that existed was a cost minimization strategic focus. But now we're in a risk mitigation focus. And so now you need to diversify your supply chain so you're not caught. Now, what's the consequence of that? Maybe that you're going to have an elevated cost. And so some people are going to go, Warren, that's bad advice to elevate.
Well, Warren, hold on a second. I want to interject here.
Sure.
So, I did analysis. I've had an interest in taking a look at cost structures of manufacturing around the world for decades now. I'm not totally sold that the cost of buying products made in some countries is actually less expensive than buying products made in Canada or the US.
I think that's a great point.
And the biggest flaw is that we don't do a very good job at calculating the cost of production that is off balance sheet.
Yeah.
And our federal government at one point brought this up with the the carbon footprint, the environmental, but there's much more than that. There's the societal aspect of it. It's not even spoken about at all. When I take a look at it, the cost of us sourcing products from some countries is actually greater than us sourcing locally. But where we're weak in terms of supply chain, we've done a poor job at analyzing the costs. And you brought up a fantastic point, Warren. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that one.
But part of my point is, even if within that individual business's cost impact, the cost goes up from the diversification of your supply chain, in light of the possibility, because remember, the future is still uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen.
That's right.
And so in light of an uncertain future, how do you preserve your ability, your continuity? How do you ensure you can continue? And that's having a supply chain that you can rely on. So maybe you take a little bit of hit on cost to ensure continuity. But those are just, it's a different way of thinking now, which is about risk mitigation, business preservation. And I'll also say that in light of the number of changes that are happening, we don't know what's going to be the state 3 years from now. We've got 5G coming in. There are major changes in the way people are living. Like you're in real estate. So here's one of the potential dynamics. I have a client who does landscape design, and this is one of the things he's seeing, that I actually believe a lot of businesses, even post-COVID, they've come to the realization that they can reduce their costs dramatically by having people work from home. There's no need for people to come into work 5 days a week, except in a factory or in a dentist office or, those kinds of things, right? But for office work, there's no need for people to be in the office 5 days a week. That means a lot of people are going to continue to work from home. That also means they don't have to be physically close to their office. Which then means people are going to look for cheaper real estate, which means moving outside of Toronto.
Hold on a second, Warren. That's interesting because a few months ago, I did a short video on the 5 trends that were happening in Toronto. And one of those 5 trends was that people were actually moving out of the city. So you're bang on. This has been going on for months now in Toronto, bang on. But you know what I'm really hearing you say? There's opportunities in providing services to people that work from home. There's opportunities in providing different types of services and providing value to companies that are looking to have that sustainable, more preservative supply chain and operating standard. And what does that look like? There needs to be a way to monitor that, to have backup plans. So you hit something on the head that I think is much greater opportunity than anyone realizes. And I'm thinking now what's going to happen is that AI is probably some of the platforms that use AI are going to start implementing that when it comes to smaller and medium-sized enterprises to assure their supply chain. I don't know who's doing it yet, but if they haven't done it, there's a huge opportunity there now to provide those services as a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I expect that's gonna happen in the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, Toronto's a hotbed for AI. It's one of the leading centers.
Are we ever? Absolutely. And in fact, funny you should say that. I have 3 fintech companies that I'm providing consulting services to, and one of them has an AI platform that they're launching. It's very interesting what's being done in AI. And I have another one that's actually combining AI with the crypto for digital wallets as well. And it's all in Toronto. These are all Toronto-based companies. I'm glad to be in Toronto, let me tell you, Warren.
Oh yeah, no, it's a good place to be. And my point in all of that, though, is all those changes are happening in people's lives, right? And so you as a business owner need to be thinking about those things and what the consequence of that is going to be for your business operations. You know, so when I talk about strategy, it's not just marketing strategy. It's, okay, my business is now in an uncertain environment where there are change dynamics. And so how do I preserve the cash flow now while positioning myself for what may be coming next, right? And what are the changes that I need to be thinking of? And a lot of it has to do with, you know, customer relations, but also your employees. Like, people are 6-7 months into, I mean, I'll go off on a small tangent, but there was a really interesting article recently by a woman who's been involved in setting up refugee camps around the world after international crises. And she's been doing it for a long time. And she has seen the same dynamic happen over and over and over again. That at the beginning of the crisis, people rally, right? And because it's all about problem solving, saving lives, building up infrastructure. And then there's sort of a normalizing. And then 6 months in, she says every single time, 6 months in, there's a bit of an emotional crash where people are like, oh my God, I am sick of this. And we're kind of there, you know, into this crisis. And so when we recognize that, oh, okay, so whatever emotions are going on with our team are natural, right? And we have to be aware of it. And as leaders, we have to have empathy for what's happening with our team members. And part of the strategy, there's the business strategy, but you have a people strategy. Like, how do I make sure my people feel supported, feel engaged, feel motivated, feel secure and safe, so that they can actually maximize their productivity?
How do you manage that? And where's the opportunity in that?
Right. And you as leaders, as entrepreneurial leaders, that's the like culture is sort of a leading indicator of brand. I have a client who, her business got smoked by COVID, but I've been working with her for a long time. And the good thing is she had really good cash reserves.
Good.
And so we actually, you know, she did a really, really smart pivot strategy. She didn't lose a single employee. She didn't fire anybody. All her work dried up, all of it, right? But did this super smart pivot, kept her teams incredibly engaged in the pivot, communicated with them regularly about everything that was going on, about things that were going on in their lives. Their culture is stronger than it has ever been. Their client relations are off the charts. The workflow they have coming in is phenomenal. But it was really because they sat back and thought about each of these pieces. They thought customer need, employee need, change in market dynamics, supply chain relationships, cash flow management. How do we move all of those pieces on the chessboard in a way that gets us to where we want to go?
And did you help her with that, Warren?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
How do you work with her when you do something like that?
So a lot of it goes to core. I mean, the word strategy gets overused and is perceived as something very complex. Like, strategy is nothing more than the answer to the question, how do I deploy my scarce resources of time, team, and money to achieve an objective, right? That's all strategy is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I do with them, right? So what do? You sit down and you first do like a SWOT analysis. Like, where are we strong? Where are we weak? What are the threats out there? What are the opportunities out there? And that becomes sort of like the pieces on the board. And then where do we want to go? Okay, in light of where we want to go, and this is what the board looks like, what should be our focus? So for a lot of people in the first stages of COVID, I was advising, forget your marketing strategy, it's cash flow strategy. Right now it's cash flow preservation, right? Back in March and April, that's all I was preaching, is preserve your cash. And then once they got through that, then it's like, okay, now it's customer relations, people management. So it's like, what's your focus? And you need to have a focus, because most entrepreneurs I work with, and I've done this in workshops, I'll say, tell me if the year looks like this. You start the year, you're really excited, you got 23 things on your to-do list or your goal sheet, and you're all excited to do it. Come October, none of it's been done. You're super exhausted, but nothing fundamentally has changed in the business. Right. And that's because people are trying to do too much at once, right? If you do two fundamental changes in your business a quarter, you'll have done 8 over the course of a year. You show me 3 businesses that have done 8 fundamental changes over the course of a year. You won't find them because they're all trying to do too much. So when you focus, and particularly at a time like this, you say, what should our focus be now? Boom. Okay, then what are the 3 priorities that we're going to zero in on? Okay, what are the specific tactics that are going to allow us to execute on those priorities? And when your whole team knows what that is, A, you're really clear. B, your resources are deployed efficiently. C, your team feels like they're in safe hands, which means that they're more motivated, right? And D, you have a faster trajectory to results to be able to evaluate whether things are working or not. So that's what I've been doing with all my clients. And those that follow it, it's just way more successful.
It's brilliant, Warren. It's brilliant. The simplicity of it is where the brilliancy is. Who is it that you're most likely able to help?
So that's a good question. I mean, I can help a lot of people. My own personal sweet spot for my business is sort of businesses between $500,000 and $10 million in revenue, because they tend to have a couple of staff that can do things with them. And in point of fact, for businesses that have a few staff that they want to be engaged in some of the decision making and planning and things like that, there's actually an amazing government program that winds up paying for every $1 they invest in strategic training, the government pays 6. So
wow.
they get me for like not very much money at all, but they need to have at least 2 employees that they're gonna, move into this kind of strategic thinking level of the business. And if they do, then I walk them through a training program that uses their business as a sort of a case study, but they wind up getting their whole team trained on SWOT analysis, strategic focus, strategic priority selection, and the big piece, like the really big piece, which is execution. 80% of strategies that fail, they fail on execution. And,
absolutely. Yeah.
And when I'm working with clients, this is actually after we do their plan, I sit in on their executive meetings for the first month at a minimum, because I know what happens. As soon as the plan is done, when people haven't done it, if no one is holding them accountable to it, they start skating away from it. And then the plan dies and they revert back to their old patterns of just playing whack-a-mole and reacting to things that are coming up.
That's really well put and well explained. That is exactly what I find. And somebody calls me in to help them with the big decisions. It's like, okay, now what do we do? Well, you implement it. And most of the time they ask me to step in and implement it. I like the fact that you're actually taking that month to train their employees so that it's sustainable, they can continue doing it themselves.
And once they do, it rocks. And it's so subtle. Like, it's super subtle. I'll give you the perfect example. I was working with they're a $65 million business. They had a board of directors. The owner of the business knows one of the big business gurus in the States. And when I went, I was shocked. They didn't do strategic planning. But how can you be at that level and not be doing this?
Wow.
And so that's why they brought me in, though. They wanted to do that. And so we implemented it, and we did a great job. The plan was beautiful. And the first executive meeting, the second in command of the company, came in, started talking about something that wasn't on the plan at all, didn't update her own plan accountabilities, and nobody called her on it. And at the end of the meeting, I wasn't saying anything, and at the end of it, the owner, he sort of said, "So Warren, that was our first strategy execution meeting. How did we do?" And I looked up and I said, "Well, as of this moment, your plan is dead." And they all looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "The second in command of this business came in here, didn't update the plan, went off plan. You all allowed it. Nobody held her accountable to it, which means everybody now has permission to not follow the plan, and nobody's owning it. So this plan is dead." And they all sort of sat back like this. And then they went, well, she wasn't too happy with me. But it got everybody focused, right? And it was just, it's that subtle, like they didn't even know that they'd done it.
Yeah.
Right? And so
we have our blind spots, right? We have our blind spots.
Yeah. And so that's where like the value of somebody to me comes in and says like, okay, this is how you, and I've done this with 3 companies over the last 3 weeks.
So Warren, how hard is it to get into this program?
It's not hard at all. It's a simple application form. I help contribute to, a lot of the content for the application. And as long as the business has 2 employees who are going to be elevated to participating at this strategy level, you know, because it is a jobs grant program, right? So it's meant to advance careers of people. So either they're getting a raise, or there's a new job opportunity, or they're getting a promotion or a new title, right? Then they're able to advance from there.
Now, it could be a company as small as $500,000. You don't need you don't need like a multi.
No, there's no minimum size, as long as because it's a jobs program, right? And small employers are the greatest job creators. So as long as there are opportunities for people to advance within the business, you know, get a new title or job or something like that, then they can participate. And the process is really easy. And the reason, like, I got to say this, not every coach can do this. The only reason that I qualify is I actually created a software tool called a Business That Matters Playbook. And it's a software tool that automates the whole front end of the strategic planning process by just asking a bunch of questions that you click yes or no to with a little bit of qualification.
Sorry, just a bunch of questions? That's just a few questions?
It's about 300 questions.
Oh, that's a big bunch. I was going to say, that's a big bunch of questions.
It covers every facet of the business. Everything from supply chain to cash flow management to people management to systems and processes to marketing to vision, like everything.
Great.
But what it does is when people try to do their own SWOT analysis, it usually comes back really thin. I've done this. I've been doing this since 2002. And I ask someone to do a SWOT analysis, they come back to me with 15 items. When I'm done with them, it's about 200. And so what I did was, rather than make me do that with them, I got this software tool, and just through a bunch of yes/no questions, it automatically populates a SWOT analysis.
Wow.
So they don't have to do a lot of heavy thinking. It's just yes, no, with a little bit of qualification. Then we have a fully baked, detailed SWOT analysis, which serves as the platform from doing all the rest of the planning. And then it does some other automations and how it automatically populates your 90-day plan and things like that.
Wow.
But that's why it qualifies for this program, because the program actually supports training not on the use of software, but on job skills that rely on software.
Right. Now, you're going to provide this software to the person that gets approved for the program?
Yeah, each member of the team gets a copy of the software.
And they get to use it as often and ongoing as they want?
In perpetuity. Once they're in, they have it forever.
Well, that's amazing, Warren. You've done a lot of work since we had last spoken.
Well, that's interesting. There's a guy from there's a fellow who trains entrepreneurs all over North America with a group called EO, and he had $100 million business. And he told me, he said, it was nice. He reviewed it and he said, this is singularly the best strategy development tool I've ever seen. I wish I had it in my business.
You know what? You and I will have a chat later on. When I was a commercial lender for one of the top banks, I was asked to participate in the automation of the loan decisions making. And we looked at a lot of different programs. But at that time, I was also still running my management consulting company, doing business plans. And I know exactly what it's like from both ends in terms of creating the business plan, but also analyzing it, especially if you're a banker or an investor. And your tool is fantastic. I want to take a closer look at that. This sounds fantastic. I'm definitely very curious. So Warren, I have to get going soon.
Sure.
So do you mind if I maybe get people to look at the link that I'll provide, and then maybe I'll forward them to you so that if they have any questions or want to be part of this program, you could help them?
I would be delighted to. And you know, at the risk of sounding pitchy, because this is you know, I'm not a big pitcher. You know me. I try to help people. But this program is one of the greatest things I've seen to be helping people, and the fact this software tool enables it to happen. And what I'm just seeing consistently, like I've actually spoken to a ton of associations. I've spoken to a ton of entrepreneurs. This period has been the busiest for me in probably 10 years, this whole COVID experience. And I will tell you, the people who are succeeding are the people who are standing back, taking a breath, thinking about what the long term looks like, not panicking, but really willing to do this analytical work, making hard decisions, and then putting those decisions into action.
I agree.
It's whether you're using me or using something else, that's the process you need to go through in order to survive and thrive in this period. As I say, a number of my clients are having the best years they've ever had. And it's really because of this kind of analytical work. So please just don't sit back in fear and not do it. Like this program that I'm talking about, it's $900 a month for 2 months to me because the government is paying the rest of it.
Amazing program, great value. And I hear you when you say that right now, don't panic. Sit back, take a look at the landscape, and make the long-term decisions. And then, of course, take the action. And like, you know what, you have some great insights today. Thank you so much, Warren.
Well, thanks for having me, Baldo. It's great to see you as always.
Yeah. You know what, we can do this again. I have other questions about other topics I think you and I should chat about. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll chat soon, okay?
Cheers.
All right. Bye now.